Welcome to Jesus Changes Everything, a daily podcast dedicated to providing a fresh look at the ancient and glorious truth that Jesus not only reigns, but is busy about the business of bringing all things under subjection, that celebrates the wonder and the glory that he has been given all authority in heaven and on earth. I find it hard to imagine how it could have gone any better. We have finally had our first Sunday of worship as Sovereign Grace Fellowship. Though it is not our long-term intention to stay here, we did have our first meeting here in my home here with Lisa. And Lisa, as one might expect, was an amazing hostess. She prepared the house, beautified the house, ordered the house for this particular calling, and welcomed people to the house. We were blessed to have, maybe 7 families and 4 singles attending, something like that, which fit comfortably in the home. And it was just a sight. And I want to tell you the reason why. I think what we got a chance to experience on Sunday was to watch the fruit of people's faithful prayers. We have not been shy in the least in seeking out and asking for prayer support as we were about the business of starting this church. Now, let me say this, we still want it. It's very easy for people to focus in on that inaugural Sunday and then to sort of move on to other things. In fact, I'm confident that a strong percentage of the people that came and worshiped with us did so not because they're interested in being a part of the church long term, but because they're friends and wanted to be an encouragement to us. Many, again, who prayed will have prayed for that launch, but we need prayer just like, no one would ever say, I'm not going to pray for that marriage because I prayed for their wedding. Now, that said, I should tell you this too. One of the things that we emphasized in our service of worship on Sunday is that we gathered together to worship the living God. And in a very real sense, it was an ordinary Sunday. This wasn't a Sunday about Sovereign Grace Fellowship, because Sovereign Grace Fellowship is not about Sovereign Grace Fellowship. Sovereign Grace Fellowship is about the gospel. It's about Jesus. And that's what our service was. We were blessed to have beautiful music provided by Craig and Penny Dewar, who are partnering with us in this work. They did a wonderful job, and people were willing and able to give themselves to worship. Just yesterday, as I'm recording, I released a video update on the church in which I talked about our commitment to the idea that we're not going to have a worship team or a choir. We're going to be a worship team, and we're going to be a choir. We are the church at worship. Worship is not something you come to. Worship is something you come do. And Craig and Penny understand that principle as well. We're on exactly the same page there. And that's, again, what we got to experience this Sunday. I had the pleasure of being able to preach God's Word. Our text for our first Sunday was 2 Kings chapter 7, and the account of the lepers who go and discover that the Syrians who'd laid siege to the city of Samaria had fled and left behind all their goods and all their food. The title of the sermon was Beggars All. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties in terms of being able to get this up and out there. We did have people online able to watch, but we weren't able to save it and get it up. But it is our hope and our intention to be able to do that moving forward. And so if you are interested in tuning into our worship service, you can do this at RC-Lisa Sproul on Facebook. We'll be on Facebook Live beginning at 11 o'clock on Sunday, on all Sundays. That's where we'll be. We're looking for people who would like to participate in that way, but we don't want anyone to neglect the gathering together of the saints in choosing instead to go somewhere online. We want you to be supportive of your local church. We want you to, you can't be a member of this church online. You can participate with us, of course, and we would love to have that, love to have you with us. We're always looking for financial support in the calling of planting this church. It is not an easy thing to do financially. It takes a great deal of time and energy, and it doesn't come equipped with a full-size congregation that can support a pastor and his family. So we are looking for partners who would like to come alongside of us. We're also, as always, looking for people who will pray diligently, fervently, and I would add long-term for Sovereign Grace Fellowship. I'm going to continue to try to keep us up to date. I'm not sure if I'll do a segment every week, but every so often we'll give a segment to Sovereign Grace Fellowship and what's happening there on the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, operating on the assumption that many of you are interested in hearing this, and certainly interested in why we do what we do. So, thank you for listening to this. I hope you'll tune in. If not, come and worship with us. If you're nearby, we'd love to have you with us. You can come any Sunday. We will keep you up to date on when we, by God's grace, move out of our home. But in the interim, you can come to 4425 Denali Cove, Fort Wayne, Indiana, 46845. That's where we will be worshiping in 2 days from as I record, so we hope to see you there. It's time once again for another Curating Your Movie Library, and sadly, my precious wife is not able to be with me for this particular one, and so I decided once again to do a top 5 list. Now, this top 5 list is not of the top 5 movies. This is the top 5 episodes of the greatest television show ever. Now, to demonstrate my broad-mindedness and my compassion with those who are not quite as astute as your host, I am perfectly willing to accept differing lists of the top 5 episodes of this program. I am not, however, willing to embrace the notion that there is another show better than this show. The show of which I speak, the greatest television show ever, which you ought to know, is The Andy Griffith Show. Right now, The Andy Griffith Show, in its entirety, all 259 episodes, are available to stream on Amazon Prime. Lisa and I have been going through these together, although we have, I confess, slowed down a little bit once we've gotten to the colored episodes that Barney's not on. And in fact, you'll discover that my top 5 list includes only episodes from the black and white years, which were the first 5 years in which Barney was a part of the show. And in fact, Barney is critical to all 5 episodes, but he's not the only one. I'd like to start with number 5. The 5th greatest Andy episode ever is Barney's first car. One of the reasons this is such a great episode is because Barney gets to be Barney, and he's just really good at being Barney. Another reason why it's so good is that Gomer has a pretty good-sized role in this particular episode, and he is always a welcome addition. Third reason on the list is that the antagonist, the nemesis on this particular episode, is played by Ellen Corby. If that name rings a vague bell, that's because Ellen Corby was the grandmother on the Waltons, and she's the bad guy in this story. It's also, by the way, one of about a dozen episodes in which Sam the Butcher from Brady Bunch fame makes an appearance. Each of those episodes, he plays a different character. So Barney's Car is number 5. Number 4, Barney Cooks. This is the story of Barney. We get a glimpse into his life where for this particular episode, he is shown in his room that he takes at a boarding house, Mrs. Mendelbright's boarding house. And he gets caught by her cooking in his room when that's not what he's supposed to be doing, and mayhem ensues. This particular episode also has a great scene where Thelma Lou is left lipstick all over Barney's face as the two of them are kissing in the courthouse when Opie shows up. Great little conversation as well between Opie and Andy on their way to the courthouse on that particular episode. Number 3, also starring Barney, The Shoplifters. This is really a fun episode where oh gosh, what is his name? I can't believe I can't remember his name. Ben Weaver. When Ben Weaver's store, and by the way, the Ben Weaver on this episode is not the good Ben Weaver, it's the bad Ben Weaver. But he plays Ben Weaver, he's got a department store and they're getting robbed, and Barney goes undercover to find out what's going on and who the shoplifter is, and just does a magnificent job. This is one of the episodes as well in which Clint Howard makes an appearance as what is his name? He's always carrying Leon. He's always carrying around a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and dressed up like a cowboy. And he's in this particular episode. Number 2 on the list, Mayberry Christmas. Oh, what a great episode. That one has the right Ben Weaver in it, and he plays a critical role in it. Barney has a smaller role, but it's very beautiful, very touching, very Christmassy, and just lovely. I mean, I just love that particular episode. And now the greatest episode ever. And this one involves Barney. It involves Andy. It involves... well, of course I had to include an episode with Ernest T. Bass. And this one is called My Fair Ernest T. This is the one where Andy takes it upon himself to try and teach Ernest T. some manners, and then decides to test this dressed up, spit-shined Ernest T. by taking him to one of Mrs. Wiley's parties where Ernest T. finds a girlfriend. It's just hilarious. And the scene where Barney demonstrates for Ernest T. how to enter a room during a party is well worth the price of admission. That's my top 5. Now, as I said, I'm perfectly willing to hear arguments about others that should have been included on the list or changing the list around. I'd be happy to hear from you about that. If you want to make an argument that there is a better show than the Andy Griffith Show, you're just going to be talking to a brick wall. I won't hear that for a moment. So that's the top 5 Andy Griffith episodes, the greatest show ever. C.S. Lewis, in his essay on the reading of old books, affirms the obvious truth that every age is given to peculiar blind spots. When we read the Puritans, we will see them. When we read Athanasius, oh, by the way, Lewis' essay on the reading of old books was written originally as a foreword for Athanasius' classic work on the Incarnation. When we read Athanasius, we will see the blind spots from his age. When we read from our own age, we're much less likely to see them. We're able to see the blind spots of others, but we're blind to our own. That's pretty much what blind spot means. The Bible, of course, transcends differing eras, but in different eras, were likely to have differing blind spots toward the Bible. We have, for instance, in huge swaths of the evangelical church, a practical sexual ethic that says something like, "Let not unwed pregnancy be named once among you." Fornication, no problem. Impregnation, big problem. That said, I would suggest worse still in our age is our seemingly utter disregard for various and sundry biblical warnings against the sins of the tongue. We live in, after all, the information age. We value information, access to news, and value not a whit the privacy or the reputation of others. Even less are we concerned with biblical categories of evidence and justice. Mere accusations, and those even from anonymous bloggers, are often enough to ruin the reputation of others. Have you heard? Recently, there was in the evangelical corner of the internet some buzz about a legal challenge being faced not by a Christian celebrity pastor, but by the son of a Christian celebrity pastor. Some seem to have overlooked the biblical warning. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. Others are rightly praying over the situation, but wrongly talking about it. Gossip isn't merely speaking untruths about others. It also includes speaking when the truth isn't known. See Proverbs 18:13, where we read, "He who answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly and shame to him." However, there is a third category of gossip. We gossip when we speak untruths about others. We gossip when we speak about what we do not know for certain about others. But we also gossip when we speak what we do know for certain, but have no stake in the matter. This celebrity pastor's son and his issues with the law are no concern of mine. In fact, they're of no concern to 99% of those who felt the need to weigh in on it on the internet. It is no concern to 99.9999999% of those who read those who weighed in on the matter. I've seen my own scandals and those of many dear friends play out on the internet. I've seen discernment bloggers, mommy bloggers, and countless ordinary social media users speed right past the Bible's warnings. Some of those people I've been pulled over for speeding. Some I've seen in a ditch. Others I've seen drive right over the cliff. Whether it is my own sins or the sins of others, one thing we know for certain: God will not be mocked. And mocking those for whom he sent his Son is mocking him. The world and the Word are both filled with things that God invites us to talk about. We are to encourage one another in our walk. We are to bear one another's burdens. We are to praise his holy name We are to gently correct one another, mindful of our own danger in falling. We're to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. We can start by walking humbly with each other. Before we say goodbye for the day, let me remind you once again of our other podcast, Ask RC. It's just a 5-minute podcast. It comes out 5 days a week. It's only published on YouTube, though we do link to it on my Twitter account and various Facebook accounts as well. 5 minutes taken to answer particular questions. And today, not so much a question that people in general might have, but people who would be interested. Today we're going to look at what's going on, how things are going in the very, very early days of Sovereign Grace Fellowship. Check it out. Ask RC on the RC Sproul Jr. channel on YouTube. You've been listening to the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, a production of Dunamis Fellowship, the teaching outreach of Dr. R.C. Sproul Jr. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe, which you can do at all the usual outlets, to tell your friends, and to spread the word. To learn more about the work of Dunamis Fellowship, please visit rcsproulJR.com. And join us next time on Jesus Changes Everything.